All right, so last couple of days we've been talking about a specific type of inheritance. I'm going to share this tab for those of you who have not yet joined the Jamboard so you can still see it. We've been talking about first couple of days we talked about complete dominance. And again, I do want you to write this table down in your notes. The heterozygote in complete dominance is going to show the dominant trait. And an example of the notation for complete dominance, the dominant allele, oops. Rudy, how do we write the dominant allele typically? What do we use to represent the dominant allele? A capital letter, good. And therefore, the recessive allele, we use a lowercase letter. All right. Okay. Now, today we're introducing a new type of inheritance that is called incomplete dominance. The heterozygous genotype for incomplete dominant shows a blend of the two traits, so of the dominant and recessive. And an example of the notation here, like I said, we use a capital letter for the dominant allele. We still use a capital letter. So for example, it could be R. But for the recessive allele, we still use that same capital letter, so still capital R, but it's going to be followed by an apostrophe. And that apostrophe is called prime. Okay, so here are the differences between the two. And if you can remember what the heterozygote looks like, you're in a great place. You're in a great place to solve these problems. If you can remember that with complete dominance, the heterozygote is going to still show the dominant trait. That's excellent. And then if you can remember that with incomplete dominance, the heterozygote shows a blend of the dominant and recessive traits, then that's excellent. All right, so I'll leave this up for a little bit longer, and then we're going to go back to the slides. But you all still have access to that Jamboard. It's in the chat. Okay, let's come back to the slides. So here's another look at incomplete dominance. Here, let's say that we said that in flower colors, red is incompletely dominant to white. There are your three genotypes right there. We've got the homozygous dominant genotype. Where's my? So we've got the homozygous dominant genotype, two capital R's, that results in a red phenotype. Then the heterozygote has one dominant allele and one recessive allele. That recessive allele looks like R prime, and it results in a pink phenotype. The reason for that is that the recessive phenotype is white. So when we blend red and white, we end up with pink. This is what incomplete dominance gives us, a blend of the two traits. And again, R apostrophe is pronounced R prime. Okay, so let's do a practice problem. We're following the same steps. It's the same thing that we've been doing for the last couple of days. The only difference is in that heterozygous genotype. So we're first going to determine what each allele means, and we're going to make a key. We will split the parental genotypes on the outside of the box. We'll combine those genotypes together, and that's called doing a cross or crossing the two individuals. We analyze by determining the genotypic and phenotypic ratios. And then we answer the question, always. There is an assignment on Canvas that is going to help you all practice with all three types of these inheritance patterns: incomplete dominant, complete dominance, and then one more that we'll talk about later called codominance. So this is the first question of that assignment. So if you write this down, then you'll automatically have your answers for this assignment, the first question of the assignment. All right, the question says, and we've got 12 minutes left, brown is incompletely dominant to white in mice, resulting in a tan phenotype. So we see that brown is the dominant, white is the recessive, and then the homozygous phenotype is going to be tan. It's a blend of the two. If a brown mouse, which has the genotype BB, mates with a white mouse, which has the genotype B prime, what phenotype would their offspring have? All right, so our first step is still to make a key. Our key is going to look exactly the same as it always has. We're looking for the same information. So let's see. Fraylin, if you're here, can you tell me what the dominant allele is going to look like in this problem? What do we use to represent the dominant allele in this problem? Fraylin or Jason or Brianna or Gloria, anybody. I'm not sure who's actually paying attention right now. Somebody just give it to me. What does the dominant allele look like? What is representing it? Okay, now Ayana, you're on the right track, but remember, an allele is just one of those letters. An allele is just one letter. So it is the capital B, not two B's, just one. Thank you for that, Ayana. And Ayana or anybody else, can you tell me what trait does that dominant allele code for?
Brown.
Thank you, Brianna. Good. And so if B is the dominant allele and it codes for brown, then what is, and thank you, Rudy, as well, what is the recessive allele and what does it code for? Remember, this is incomplete dominance. It says brown is incompletely dominant to white. So what is the recessive allele here? What is, okay, now, Brianna, remember, this is incomplete dominance. So let me go back really quickly. With incomplete dominance, we use a capital letter with an apostrophe after it to represent the dominant, to represent the recessive allele. So the recessive allele is represented by a capital letter followed by an apostrophe. For example, R apostrophe, we call it R prime. So in this case, the problem that we're doing, if B is the dominant allele, then if a capital B is the dominant allele, then what is the recessive allele? Yes, now that should be a capital B. I just want to be clear about that. In this case, they're both capital. So the dominant allele is a capital B. The recessive allele is also a capital B, followed by an apostrophe. Thank you, Brianna. And which trait does this code for? Which trait does this B prime code for? White. Thank you, Brianna. Okay. So we've figured out our two alleles now. Now we're in a great place to figure out what each of the genotypes looks like as well. So remember, an allele is just one letter. It's just one copy of a gene. We human beings and every other sexually reproducing organism on Earth get two copies of every gene because we have two parents. Okay, and that's what a genotype is. It's two alleles. That's why we use two letters. Okay, so let's speed this up. We only have 7 minutes. What does the homozygous dominant genotype look like? Thank you, Rudy. Excellent. Let's go fast like that. BB. And what trait does that give us? What phenotype is that associated with? Brown. Thank you, Brianna. Excellent. Okay, now we're going to jump down to, we're skipping heterozygous for now. We're going to jump down to homozygous recessive. What does that look like? Homozygous recessive. What is that genotype? Come on, we already know what the recessive allele is, so we just need the recessive allele is not a lowercase b. What's the recessive allele in this case? We already wrote it into the key. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Brianna, be careful. Look at your key. What does the recessive allele look like? Rudy, you have the right answer. The recessive allele is a B prime. It's a capital B followed by an apostrophe. So the homozygous recessive genotype is two of those. Remember, homo is a prefix meaning same. So we want two of the same alleles. And in the case of the homozygous recessive genotype, we want both of those alleles to be recessive. So we want one B prime next to another B prime. There's your homozygous recessive genotype. And which phenotype is that associated with? White. Good. Now, hetero, if we remember, is a prefix that means different. So in the case of a heterozygous genotype, we want the first allele to be different than the second allele. We want them to be two different things. So what does that give us in this case? What is the heterozygous genotype? Good, Rudy. All we need to do is take the dominant allele, which is just a capital B, and then we need to put it next to the recessive allele, which is a B prime. So there's your heterozygous genotype, B, B prime. Good job, Rudy. And which phenotype is that associated with? If this is incomplete dominance, it's incomplete dominance. Which phenotype does that give us? No, not white. Look at the first sentence of the question. It says brown is incompletely dominant to white in mice, resulting in a tan phenotype. So incomplete dominance, folks, if you wrote down that chart that I was drawing on the Jamboard, incomplete dominance results in a blend. So if we blend brown and white, if we literally mix them, we end up with tan. So the heterozygous phenotype in this case is tan. This is the difference between complete dominance and incomplete dominance. If this were complete dominance, then the heterozygous phenotype would still be brown, just like Rudy said. Because in complete dominance, the dominant allele will always hide or mask the recessive allele. But this is incomplete dominance. So that dominant allele, which is brown in this case, cannot totally hide the recessive allele, which is white. So we end up with a mixture. It's still kind of brown, but the white is still showing up a little bit. That's why we call it incomplete dominance. And it ends up in tan. Okay, we've got 2 minutes. Our next step is to make the Punnett square. It tells us that one of the parent mouses, or one of the parent mice, I should say, not mouses, is homozygous dominant, 2 capital B's. The other parent is homozygous recessive, which is B prime, B prime. All right, so if I do my cross, what's going to end up in this very first box? Which genotype is going to end up in this very first box? Good. Yeah, thank you, Brianna. Now you have B prime showing up first. That's fine. You can write it like that, but typically we always write the dominant allele first. So I have B prime, I have B prime. Same thing. Just like if I were to tell you 1 plus 7 is 8, and then you're like, oh, but 7 plus 1 is 8. They equal the same thing. It doesn't matter which order you're going in. Okay, so, but typically we do write the dominant allele first. Just keep that in mind. Okay, what's going to go in this box over here? Good. Same thing. And if we look at it, we're going to end up with the same thing in all 4 boxes. So all of the offspring are tan in this case, because if we use our key, we see that this B prime genotype is associated with a tan phenotype. Okay, so this is kind of tough. And we're going to need to get some more help with this. I know we're out of time. I'm just going to say, so Tuesday of next week is going to be your test, which means that we have 3 days to finish this unit. It's going to be tight. I need you guys practicing on your own in order for us to fully understand this material. There are several assignments that are already loaded into Canvas that will give you a great opportunity to practice. You should be doing them. I didn't assign anything new today because we're tight on time on Wednesdays, but it's a great opportunity because you'll have the entire afternoon to yourself to get some work done. So you should use it wisely, okay? Please make sure you're knocking out those assignments. Here's what they look like. Give me a second. Oops, too far. So there are 4 assignments there: basic genetic practice, complete inheritance practice, incomplete and codominance inheritance practice, and whiteboard practice. Also, the warm-ups and exit tickets are going to be helpful to you all as well. So if you do all of them, I really think you're getting really good practice. That's going to be helpful to you. Okay, so we'll pick up here tomorrow. Good job, Rudy and Brianna. And I appreciate those of you who joined our Jamboard too. But I will talk to you all tomorrow.